Good morning everyone, and welcome to this very special event between Jasugi99, otherwise known as 12teen, and Crazyhouse World Champion opperwezen. This is an exhibition Crazyhouse match, which is going to be 100 games of 1+0, and I'm your commentator Mugwort. Today is 50 games only, and then another 50 games on Sunday the 1st of December. If I'm speaking quietly today, it's because it is extremely early in the morning, Sydney, Australia time, but it will most probably be evening or afternoon for the rest of the world on a Thursday. So Friday morning here in Sydney. The match is just about to get underway any second, and we're very much looking forward to see what these two players have in store for us today. Good morning, White Dancing Rockstar. Yeah, so 12teen very strong in 1-0. Very hard to predict who's going to win. I would say 50-50. Could go either way. But if I were to be so bold to make a prediction, I would say Opper takes the match 52 games to 48. And there we go. There's my prediction. I was actually pretty close in the Jan Lee match. I predicted 56 to 44, and it was something like 54 to 46 from memory. So players both online, and it's due to start in any second. So sit back, relax. I don't have a coffee made to serve me this morning, but yeah, just the old-fashioned self-service. Was experiencing a menagerie of interesting creatures at 4:30 this morning in the bathroom when I got up. So some strange flapping wing bugs flying around the bathroom. I have an open window in there, so it's a bit hard for them to, rather easy for them to crawl in, fly around. So Jasugi saying in the game chat, starting at 10:05. I'm sure that means 5 past the hour, whatever hour he's at. Is it really 10 in the morning? That would mean he's in the west coast of Canada, I guess. So we'll be starting in a minute or two. We already have 11 people in the game chat. And I will be posting this to YouTube after we finish in case you missed the start of the match. That Opper photo, he looks so intense, huh? Morning, Juice Bold. Yeah, so we had OK's art submission. What did he say? It was from Marastika chess match where they used human chess instead of blood sacrifices or something. That was just the introduction before the board loaded up. I'm glad someone recognizes it. I hadn't seen the photo or heard the story before. So White Dancing Rockstar's going for TT to win. Yeah, I mean, you could easily say on their day that either of these players would win. And John Lee on his day would win as well versus either, but it's just a matter of who comes out of the starting blocks faster and manages to keep the lead and hold a streak of games. Here we go. Jasugi started E4 and C4. So anti-theory already on move 2. He had been known to do this a bit from the Crazyhouse Teen League. and you'll notice the players both keeping on track on time, so neither side getting a lead in the opening. They've had a few knight trades. Black's queen covering g6, bishop on h5, trying to knock away the queen so he can gain access to g6. I might just at least hover the mouse around the square I'm talking about. So good defense at the moment from Opper. A little bit hard to get in, but there is access on h6 if the king steps backwards. So that's why Opper sacked the rook. It looks like he's, I was going to say running to d7, but maybe there was a pawn at c6, maybe even queen a4 check. So going for queen f6 and bishop g4. He has to drop a pawn here, sack for 2 pawns, pawn at f7 should finish the game. Oh, he's going e7, g8 queen, take, and rook at c8. Rook at d7 is probably also good enough. A rook at f8 is mate in 1. Nope. Oh, we've missed a mate in 1 already. Maybe Jasugi's just woken up. I think he was online only a few hours ago. So Jasugi has taken the first game. Just checking if you can see the scoreboard. Yeah, so just follow, if you can see the mouse here, that'll be the live score update in the first part of the match. So we have a French with bishop g5. Actually, don't see this too often in Crazyhouse. I'm wondering what the variation is. You don't normally see e5 after knight f6. Oh, sorry, bishop g5 before e5, that's what I mean. I'm sure it has a name in standard chess, but the name escapes me at the moment. Classical French or something. So what do we have here? Threat on e7. So bishop at either d6 or b4 perhaps. Hang on, what? As a check. But still he has to cover e7, not easy to do. Bishop b4 could be blocked out perhaps by pawn at c5. So Jasugi's resigned early. We have a Scotch-like position. Going for an early bishop sack on f7. This avoids some of the very heavy mainline theory which we saw Opper play against John Lee in the previous weeks. So just one pawn short from mate on g7. It's a little unclear what the best play is from here. So going f4, just trying to get as many pawns forward as possible and opening the way for castling. What now? So queen sack, you see the knight covers on g7. Didn't quite seem good enough. So probably knight takes an f5. It does still look good for white. It's a very promising attack. Got to be careful of the knight forks on e2. So the queen stepping to a square. Lone Wolf saying black is getting away. He likes black because he's got the extra piece, but pawn at g7. I would have gone pawn at g7 straight away. So he's gone for the pin. Does still look good. Good morning, David, or good evening, or whatever time zone you're in. So white's got the queen. Let's see, queen at h7. Doesn't have to be in a great hurry. There's no mating threats because black doesn't have any heavy pieces. So f6 he's going to clean up on, or just queen h7. Queen f7, is it? No, the king won't be ever safe on e5. So 2 games to go to 1. Going with the white pieces so far. Opper's thrown in some different openings here. g3, bishop g2. h6 a pretty safe way to play, just to stop bishop g5. Always make sure the bishop has somewhere to tuck back. Opper's gone for the piece sack, but he does have b7 if he wants it. There was also h3. So nice move, knight at f3, stopping black from putting a knight there. But black is taking over h3, g2. And there was a threat to go knight at h3 and knight g4 checkmate. Possibly knight at d4. Is it enough pieces in hand? pawn at f3 looks very close to mate knight at e2, knight g4, but he's needing a bishop for g2 perhaps. Don't see any direct mate. Hi Vin. It's not exactly a tournament, it's more of an exhibition match because Jasugi or 12teen didn't take part in the Crazyhouse World Championship this year. So opperwezen was the winner, as you can see on the right hand side of the screen, and he's just taking on Jasugi in a fun exhibition match, but it is for a $200 prize fund. What do we have here? White does seem to have a huge shot. We see a draw because of the drops on c7 and too many pieces in hand. So Jasugi must have been very close to a mate with all those knights and pawns, but hard to calculate, especially in 1-0 with little time. And of course, once you've sacked all the pieces, there's no turning back from there. So once you sack enough pieces, I guess he had to settle for a draw. I didn't actually see a forced mate. Maybe there was one, but hard to see. Wow, interesting queen sack here. There is knight takes queen on offer. He doesn't want it due to the two knights in hand and the weakness of the white king. He's just leaving the queen there for the moment. Okay, now he's taking it. I wonder what his idea is keeping safe. So he's going to go to f3. Only 3 knights in hand. He'll be safe on g2. So from all the knight drops, knight d4, king g2 is my idea. We're going to see possibly a queen sack at some point. Not yet. Just take f6. Block out the bishop. So when I move the mouse on the board, I've got to watch out for all these menus. So no queen sack on h8. Alright, so black can't do that much to attack with the 2 knights. Just going to hunt down the queen. Probably queen h6. And going for these. I was going to say get rid of these knights with pawn at e3. But I guess knight g4 is coming. So Oppa got the time advantage and also got the queen. So bishop e3 is necessary to stop queen f2. Oh, this is too much, too fast. Black king looks very safe. So win on position and on time. Wow, amazing opening creativity there from opperwezen, leaving the queen on b6. And just using all those holes that Jasugi made in the opening. So he's going to have to think about whether to repeat or try something different maybe in the next game with white. Jasugi has an easy mate, says David, dropping check on f2 before taking the rook. Yeah, I'm engine free, so I'm not checking the computer. I don't doubt you. What do we have here? I missed the opening, but it looked like some sort of gambit where Jasugi played. Oh, but he didn't play a6. Maybe it was just an early d5. Yeah, so it's a d5 e6 gambit. Once black gets some relative safety, I normally prefer to be black, even if it's subjectively still better for white, just because it's so easy to drop the pieces. Look at the holes on d4, g2. Black king very safe after castles. Trading queens is always going to be good for black. Obvious mate in one threat. If trade knight takes, just drop a pawn back on e2. This is almost resignable for Oppa. Look at the time advantage as well. Yep, he's thrown in the towel, so that takes the score to 3.5, 2.5 in favor of Jasugi. They've just traded a black win each, and you can see Jasugi going for a different opening. So a French with knight g5. Queen, I wonder if it's going to be safe on f5. I'm not sure if this is something Jasugi has prepared because he's bashing out the moves quite fast. So this pin very hard to deal with. How does he keep defending e4? So sack the piece, queen sack, wow. Obvious mate threat on h1, how does he deal with it? Doesn't want to sack here because then there'll be a rook at h1. And then knight f2, queen at e1, rook back on, if he had enough. Did he have enough queens and rooks for that? I've lost count. But rook at h1 did look dangerous. So big pressure here is on h2, so threatening g takes h2. So now sacking the queen to break the pin, so the knight is covering h2. And now the threat still seems to be g takes h2 followed by pawn at f2. So he's going for checks, bringing the bishop out. I don't think rook takes d1 is going to cover all the threats. He needs to cover f2, g1 somehow. No, gh2 is going to win for black. So what do we have? 3.5 games all. Yeah, as we said at the start, very hard to predict the result. Bishop h4 could have grabbed at least one pawn. Possibly. I cannot confirm or deny whether he's getting mated. I'm trying to stick with the action, but yeah, I can't. It requires some analysis. I can't say whether white was surviving there. It felt to me black was mating anyway, but I couldn't give you a precise line at the moment. So we have a similar opening. Yeah, I see it's attacking g3. But again, my feeling is, as always, once the black king castles and achieves some safety, white is just too underdeveloped. So I much prefer black in this sort of position. So again, kick the knight from d4, move the knight to d4, very simple strategy. And look at these bishops, wow. Just looks huge advantage for black. How does Jasugi get into these positions? So he has a light square strategy, just keep dropping pawns on the light squares, f3. Look at the weaknesses on e2, g2. Take there first, just leave the pawn here because he can choose which piece he takes. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Jasugi is not known for his opening preparation. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised. We have a cheeky mate here. No, not yet. Bishop is just going for the win on time, but looked very close to mate after pawn at d3. Yeah, not known for his opening preparation. He sometimes just rocks up to the board and has an idea and runs with it. So again, similar opening with knight g5. Going to pick up the queen this time. The knight is covered, but there is a bishop b4 on offer. So I'm not sure whether it was necessary to drop the queen. Why not drop the pawn instead if the knight was already covered? I've got some problems with takes g2 and queen at h1, but there is castle's queenside. Bishop back. What's he going to do with his pawn? Going this way. That's very clever, anticipating castle's queenside. So making a hole on b2 first, before white castles. So here black is looking for a knight drop, so either kicking the knight here or just trading knights and then knight at e4. Queen seg, bishop at queen g3 was a mate in 1, but he's found it anyway. Alright, so far we found 2 mates in 1 that were missed. David's found some improvements. I gotta watch out for 95 attacking on d7. Opper's very good at these d4, d5 openings. Trying to take advantage of any slight mistake. Maybe triple pawns, take f5. So d5 is covered for the moment. Black is winning a lot of games, yeah. So tying the matchup at 4.5 each. Opper still has a white in hand, but I don't know, was this a mouse slip? Bishop at g1? What? I didn't notice. Was it a draw? We've had two draws so far. Surely Katask has got to be playing one of these accounts with 2 draws so far in the first 10 games. Alright, looks like me versus OK, but OK went pawn at a3. So the other choice was trade a knight at e4, as what happened here. Queen back to f1 with the bishop covering. It's holding for the moment, but pawn at h3 at some point is going to be a big threat. Oh, nasty move with a discovered check. I guess knight takes g2. No, he's going this way. Could the king... Oh no, the king couldn't come back because there was a queen d2 mate at the end if the knight traded. Very nice play from Opper, but a strong counterattack from Jasugi. It's what he's famous for, not just rolling over, but doing his best to fight in any position. So winning some material back. White's got a bit of an army in hand. Pawn at e7 threatening rook at g8 if takes. Probably just bishop drops. Oh, so this move clears the back row. So queen takes at e7 is possible. White doesn't have a diagonal piece, as you can see. Still doesn't have a diagonal piece. So black has the initiative, but there is pawn at g7. Queen's covering h5. Still no immediate danger for white that I can see. Oh, there was a knight takes queen. I'm not sure whether it was mating though. The king may have been safe on e1. It's just too hard to call. White king is safe for the moment. Now pawns and bishops don't mate. So knight here, queen at f6 is mate. Wow, that was a really sharp game from both players. Probably the most spectacular game so far. Very good fighting game from both players. We see a new opening again, b3, bishop b2. So black is pushing d4 straight out of the opening. Seems to indicate that I would prefer black if he's already pushing forwards. Bishop takes h3. Probably just pick up the rook. There's also moves like pawn at g4 available. So leaving the rook in hand. Sometimes you can just drop it back on g6 like he's doing here. Probably just leave the trade there and use the pawn to block out the bishop on b2. So the main target is g2. Let's see, he wants to get in somehow with pawn at g4, but the knight on f2 is a good defender at the moment. So leave the knight here in case the opening of the g-file. So there we go, pawn at g4. Now he's going to block out this bishop on b7 because it's the best defensive piece. He's going to make Opper sack the rook, but it doesn't really help him find a way in. Bishop at g1 was also possible in defense. How's he going to get in? So Jasugi down on time, so he needs to play for a mate. Amazingly, no knight drops. The bishops cover all the knight drops on d1, h1, h3, g4. He's found a way in, so d2 is the target square, and this is going to be too hard to cover. Has to sack the rook. There will be a mate here with knight at g4. There was a clever mate with rook at d1 and queen at f2, so opening up the second rank, but he's found a forced mate anyway. So the idea there, anyway, I might have been hallucinating, but let's just stick with the action. Maybe g3, pushing the queen back, then knight f3. So we see a different opening again, going for a 4-move checkmate. It's been refuted. So I'm not sure whether the players are doing this for entertainment value. It doesn't seem like the most sound opening from opperwezen, offering the queen again, or the pawn and the rook in this case. Wow, so leaving the pawn on d3, I thought he might have tried. I guess he didn't have time for d takes c4. There was a threat on the knight. But it would have been very tempting to open the d file for the white queen. So idea bishop at c5. He may just want to take on e5 if the queen steps back, or drop the bishop and make a threat of d7 if queen c8. Yeah, so here we go, opening up the queen. So this is potentially a big threat, queen at c8 perhaps. I would have dropped the queen first, but never mind. I think white still has the advantage here. The bishop covers the knight drop on g5, but watch out for pawn at g4. The queen drop is not going to be a mate. He might sack on e7 anyway, just for a series of checks in a row, because he's got to watch out. And maybe he's safe on g1, so black needs a knight or a rook. Oh, rook is coming, but no diagonal piece. Again, very sharp game from both players. They're just going for it. Yeah, so there was a threat to take and pawn at g2. Bishop at g2. Yeah, had to sack the queen, and then queen at h3 or f3 was too much. Okay, scoreline Jasugi leading 7-6. Oppa still has a white to play, so it's a long series today. 50 games, a little bit longer than the Janli versus opperwezen match. So knight at b7, eventually he will take on d6. But the pawns offer quite some substantial resistance for Jasugi here. Maybe at some point push with e4, but there is a d6 pawn that will hang. So you can see he's not pushing forwards yet, just leaving it. I thought now he could have pushed, but I think trading is also good for black. So big weaknesses here for Oppa on g3 and e3. Bishop and e3 an idea, or just pawn at e3. Pawn at e2 also very good. So this is almost resignable for Oppa. Maybe sack twice, sack on f4. He's going to do it surely. No, I would have done it. Sack the bishop, sack everything, sack the two knights. I love going sack crazy like that, especially when it's unwarranted. So e3, such a huge weakness. Yeah, sack. There's no way he can take this. Knight f5 is coming. Too many pieces in hand. There's a check. Knight f1 was very strong. Knight gf1, and then queen takes queen. A rook at h1 to finish. All right, this is a huge win for black. A very convincing performance from Jasugi. 8 games to 6. All right, so we're going to see a fight back from Oppa. Still a large number of games to go. I'm not even going to count, but there's plenty more action to come. As I said before, I will post this to YouTube if you missed the first 14 games we've had so far. So you can see Jasugi attacking on h6 and g7 before black has a chance to castle. Very important for the attacker, because it means the king will never really be safe. Attacks on all angles, as you can see. This move covers the counter on g2. Maybe just rook g1 and king e1 is an idea, but he's going for it. Knight f7 to finish, very good. Attacking play early from Jasugi in this game. So we see an exchange French with a6, stopping any bishop b5, so the knight's going to be safe on c6. Yeah, very impressive game. 2 games in a row there from Jasugi. But I like white in this game, so holds on h6 and f6. Bishop at so he's covering e3 in case he wanted to drop a pawn on e3, so the knight was covering. Gone for queen g5, maybe just trying for queen g2. But what is Jasugi playing for here? He's sacked piece. Doesn't want to take back here because of the knight at f5, so he's covered this with a pawn. But now black has, or white has the initiative, sorry. So you can't take here because of the knight at h5. Oh, he could have just taken that back and then he had a knight for h5. Making use of the bishop on a5, very nice. So piling up pressure on f4. If queen at g3, just rook at g1, take with check. And maybe queen at g7 wasn't enough, but surely this is going to be a mate sooner or later. No, I mean Jasugi's defending stubbornly. He's not throwing it this time. Hard to see exactly how white's going to get in, but is winning on material. So king very safe, doesn't need to be any great hurry. You can see the time advantage, 18 seconds versus 2. So it'll be decided on time anyway. Yeah, I mean, look how close he was to a mate in 2 seconds. Just the rook covering g4. Yeah, but Opper's got this one. Still going. This is unbelievable. I have never seen anything like this. 1.7 seconds. Wow. I have no words. What a fight back. Interesting, Jasugi not taking on e5. So it's Chuck Moulton's favorite bughouse opening. Bishop c5 early before defending e5. Personally, I don't think it works so well in Crazyhouse. Bishop at e7, maybe answered with knight takes d5. Or was he going to move the queen? Looks a bit passive. Too many holes on e7, f6 in that case. He's probably going to sack the queen. So, is it a free pawn on b5? What does black have here? Bishop at e2? Pawn at e2, right? Rook at e2. Just move the... I was going to say move the queen, no? So black is looking at knight takes g4. Knight takes g4 now. Threat of h2. Ah, sorry, it was white's turn. that would be good. Hard to say. Take knight at f5 was the idea, but he's pre-moved. Or slipped or pre-moved. Maybe he wanted to cancel the move and just dropped the knight on f5. That's unfortunate because white was definitely surviving. There was no mating attack for black with bishop takes or even pawn takes g3. Okay, morning electric Masada. It is very early in the morning for me, and Flourish is in the house. A little known fact is Z house. He's saying black has the advantage. Yeah. So we sometimes see in long matches a swing towards black. Of course, in theory, nobody is actually serious when they say that, but in practice, anything can happen, as we see. So king e8, I was going to say, and knight's covering f7. Maybe just take on e7 and sack the queen this way, and look for ways in after. Okay, g7. What's he playing for here? Queen at h7, bishop drops on f7, I suppose. He's either going to leave the queen or take on g4 at some point. There we go. So idea is queen takes g8 and then rook at f8. I'm not sure whether it was enough for a mate, because even if there was a bishop at e6, knight takes the king is running over to a7. So has to sack, or maybe, maybe he's a pawn short. But this way, I think Opper may have been only looking at knight at h4. But yeah, knight takes e1, very strong. And knight f3, yep. So very well played from black. Surviving the attack with potentially the king running over to a7 in some lines. So again, allowing this move order variation with the knight potentially coming to d7 instead of the usual c6. So I think this does work out better for black compared to a lot of the main lines. That's why white, in theory, should grab the pawn on e5 when he's offered. But certainly out of the opening, black is no better, even though black did win the last game on a slip or a pre-move cancel. So we are not even halfway through the match, part one of the match. It is 50 games. We haven't even played 20 games yet, so a long way to go. Some holes to exploit on h6, g7. I was going to say maybe rook f7 is a way to cover. but he's allowing the pawn drops. Knight at h5 picks up a rook. It should be good for white if e5. And probably just knight at... or rook on g4 is a bit safer than knight at h5. So going for bishop at f6 or... okay. He's sacking a lot. He's gone all in for the attack, but the knight on f4 is hanging, so he's abandoned that too. Well, this is the way I play. Just sack everything and hope for the best. Queen g4. So Oppa has to hope for some counterattack after the queen trade, but I don't see it. I'm not sure whether he could play queen g4 again and survive with pawn at h2 coming. I didn't actually see a mate for black in those lines though. Maybe I'm missing something. Yes. Oh, rook at g2 is the key move there, so take with check. Yeah. So hang on, that was a flag. Oh, I wasn't noticing the time. So Jasugi should have lost on the board there, but oh, flag at the last second. Wow. Didn't quite see the opening. It looks like one of these funny bug house openings where white pre-moves c3 and then you push d4. So no castling for black. I guess he could castle queenside. That does actually look safe if he gets in bishop g4 or pawn at h3 eventually. Not right now though. So take first. The queen is covering. No immediate danger, but maybe just black wants to cover. Knight at d5 I would go for. Cover some squares. There we go. So yeah, maybe queen takes g7, although pawn at f6 could be a threat. With the knight trader, knight at d5 back on the board, and then c7 is hanging. So f6 a big target. I don't see anything forcing for white though. Rook covers g8 backwards, that's important. Alright, so Oppa's gone all in for the attack. Although maybe he wants to cover all the squares around the king because rook takes g4. So who's attacking? Who's defending? That's the question here. Who's winning on material? It's too hard to count. It's changing every move. Queen A, but e2 is covered. There's no mate. There's no knight drops either, so white king is safe on d2. I think white's actually winning on the board, but also on time. So again, we're going to see one of these miraculous comebacks from Jasugi because his king is super safe, and he's just going to throw in lots of pre-moves and checks. He's got nothing though. He's got no attack. Yeah, lost on time, but again, he came amazingly close. So much material down. So Jasugi leading 11 games to 9. Still, neither side has really managed to put together a streak longer than 2 games. So really anything can happen. Neither side is running away with it. Too fast and too good, says Jamale, but as long as Oppa keeps within a couple of games, this is really anybody's match. And because Oppa is also known to pull off streaks, as we saw last week against Jan. And in the first part of the match as well. Oh, what? Oppa's missed a mate in 1. Queen takes g7. Oof. Okay, he's not going to be happy about that one. Alright, so this was Oppa's opening, a6 and d5. Not sure what this is. I've never seen knight f3, knight g5 before. Early queen trade. Almost seems like white is the one doing the gambit, but rook d8. Knight takes, cover f7. Queen at d7, so he wants queen g4 and queen g2. But the bishop can drop back on e2, so he's gone this way, pawn at d3. Trying to crack a hole on c2. Attacking in multiple directions. Oh, this is too much. Queen takes g2? No? Well, f7 was covered. I thought it would be okay. So I just pick up material. That's the way. Knight at e2. There's queen takes g2 coming. Yeah, bishop at f1 and queen f3. Okay, that's a huge game again for black from Jasugi. He has won 4 out of the last 5. Oppa just has to regroup, pull it together, and just maybe go back to some safer openings that he knows better. I was experimenting a little bit with the black pieces, but I think in theory there's nothing wrong with the openings that he's playing at the moment. It's just that Jasugi is playing extremely aggressively, and we did see Oppa play against Jan very aggressively, but Jasugi is just another level of aggression. And in the previous game we saw Jasugi was actually winning on material, but yeah, maybe Oppa made a pre-move in the opening and wasn't what he intended to do with the knight f3, knight g5. So Oppa defending the dark squares very well, so this is why we see Jasugi sacking on f7 and going for something at g6. Doesn't seem to be any threats on the back row. Maybe rook at g1 is a threat, but you got to count carefully if there's a mate or a smothered mate or something. So does he have to block? Yeah, because there was a queen at h7 threat too to cover. And this is very hard to cover. Pawn at h7, maybe only move. Take, that's it. He's not defending the back rank. Didn't have time for knight d7. And maybe he could have done that instead of trying to counterattack too early. But again, very strong attacking play. So Ryusei is saying in the chat that playing aggressively may be the only way to beat Oppa. I think good advice. And we saw in some games last week against Zhang Li that Zhang Li was sacking, but Oppa just held off the right number and type of pieces to avoid any serious mating attacks from Zhang Li. So it was a strategy he was using last week, but it's not working. I mean, Jasugi's just absolutely on fire at the moment. Chess Noob is saying, what sorcery is this? Crazyhouse. So obviously g2 is the opening here, but defending first on f6. Okay, he's a big Oppa fan, saying Oppa is the master. I don't know, it looks like at the moment, and I'm only saying at the moment, Jasugi has got his measure, but it can change. All it needs is a 2-game streak for Oppa, and he can easily come back into the match. So queen at g8 looks pretty safe at the back here. So white will need a knight for f6. But how does he defend g2? Doesn't have an answer. So it does look winning for black. There was also knight at f5, but pawn at g6 is good enough. Wow. So this is really hard to predict. 4 games in a row. He's gone back to e4, c4. And g3, I'm guessing, and knight f3. Okay, I mean, hard to say without actually knowing who this is better for, but I would say black has a serious advantage in this opening. I'm only guessing, I'm only thinking about openings in reverse, where white throws in an early queen h5, and if this c4 move actually helps. Doesn't seem to help at all in this type of position. But somehow Jasugi's on the attack again. How does it happen? I just blink my eyes and all of a sudden white is on the attack. Knight takes c7. Are we going to see knight at or... And the other question is black actually threatening anything? Is there a bishop at h2 threat? Doesn't, oh, with two queens in hand, there must be a mate threat. Oh, two queens, surely. Bishop at h2. Take, knight at g4, take with check. Yeah, or this way because he has two queens in hand. Yeah, bishop at f3, queen at g4 with a knight in hand. And knight at f4, queen f3, queen g2 to finish. That's what I saw. I may be wrong. But yeah, I mean, maybe in some lines Jasugi missed the fact that knight at g4, take was check along the h file. Hard to say exactly what he missed there, but a very strong counterattack from Opper. So queen takes d5, I think is okay in bug. Don't see this very often in Crazyhouse though. Kind of similar to what Opper was playing before with the queen swinging across to f5. So g takes, and then the big target is f6, but very hard to get into, as we saw 2 games ago. In this case, the knight has to come back first because it's kind of useless on g2. But of course the queen is hanging, so Jasugi has some problems to solve. Knight at f6 coming. So he's aiming for bishop h3. But I'm thinking it might be too slow after knight takes f6. Oh, was there a queen sack? I didn't see the queen sack working. What was his idea? I mean, once white gets the bishop to f3, I think white is safe enough. And is also threatening a very sneaky bishop takes c6 check. So this is the piece that has to be deflected or exchanged. I don't quite think Jasugi has enough with the king safe on d2. Queen takes c6, knight at a6 is the threat, and bishop at b7. Yeah, very well played from Opper. See, there we go, 2 games in a row. We are back to a 4-game deficit, 15-11 to Jasugi. Good morning, GB from P-Chess, how do you say it? P-Chess. So GB Tami is a developer of the P-Chess website with all the variants like Sarah Chess and Capablanca Chess. Probably bishop takes and knight at g4. Take. Bishop is useful on e7 or h4. Gotta watch out for something landing on e2, like in the game where Jasugi lost with a must have been a pre-move cancel slip with queen at h2. It's a very similar game to that one. But if I don't see a knight on f4, I think white is doing very well. Because once that knight has to go backwards, then black just doesn't have enough pieces far enough forwards to mount any sort of counterattack. Yeah, the queen just can't find safety and defend everything at the same time. Okay, so what are we going to see this time? Bishop b5 check. I don't think we've seen too many of these. Bishop a6, just leaving it there. I've had lots of games against John Lee and Jay Killer where they exchange bishops, and then I even just leave the knight hanging on a6 and just develop and castle. But yeah, you can play knight b4 as well. Looks good for black, this bishop on d5. Pawn at e4 coming. Bishop b4 also. So I'd take black here. Pawn at b2. Although there was a rook a7 counter. I wonder if he can do something like pawn at d3. So attacking before white has a chance to castle, but he's got to watch out for the g file. Could be something happening along the g file, maybe knight at g2 just to block the rook. So target is f3. He always has pawn at b2 if he wants it, but I guess the rook doesn't actually do a lot on b2. So he's focusing his attention on the king side. Here comes the counter. So weakness on g7, but white is going to need a heavy piece. Yeah, but it does allow the queen to defend, so just blocking on g7. No easy way in. In the meantime, f3 has to be covered. Oh, now e2 has to be covered by the bishop. He can take a rook anytime he wants, but he's gone for more. Very clever. Knight at d2, knight takes. Black should be winning this. Knight coming back to f4. No easy mate. Ah, there we go. Knight d3. I'm sure it wasn't forced, but Opper only had a couple of seconds left. Alright, what do we have here? Another one of these funny knight g5, queen d5 openings in the French. Ooh, so gone for the sack because he had to. What choice with after pawn at e4? Okay, so take the rook or sack two pieces. That's the choice here. He's gone into the tank. Queen e4 check also coming. Yeah, the knight covers e7. That's quite important. Even if the knight's dislodged, there's moves like bishop d7 to cover. And the obvious threat on f1 and h1. I think this is just an opening win for Opper. But Opper needs these sort of wins to come back into the match. So still 5 games behind. We're almost... oh no, we're just over halfway through today's session. So today will be 50 games. They've played 29 so far, 21 to go. Gone back to d4, d5. Or was it d4, a6? Alright, h5. Now Opper used this very effectively against Zhang Li, where he moved the pawn from h5 to h6 just at the right time, in a couple of games. So Jasugi's counterattack seems to rely on knight takes f2, but this is why Opper's fortifying the dark squares using the bishops, gaining time hitting the queen. And even if Opper has no immediate way in, it doesn't matter because there's always going to be holes to exploit on e7, g7. So knight will be very useful for Opper on g7. If there's no counterattack, he can just grab a rook here and stick it back on g8 too, or e7. So I think this game is a decisive advantage to white, and mainly because there's just no counterattack and yeah, too many holes on the dark squares. Knight at f6, knight takes rook, or maybe bishop e7. So it's kind of like a windmill with a repeated theme of the knight dropping on f6. A Crazyhouse windmill. I didn't even notice the H file is open as well, so just too many threats. Queen at e7. Okay, so Hopper's got 2 in a row. It seems to me Opper avoided the move a6 last time because it doesn't help black too much in this sort of position. So it is a slight variation, it seems, because in the previous game there was a very quick pawn at e4, and then Jasugi was struggling to decide which knight to sack. In this game Opper's gone for the rook, but the queen may be out of play on a1. And Opper's relying on this attack along the diagonal on h3 and g2. Yeah, I think TT did give up the rook on purpose because he was... yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say, of course, but maybe he just doesn't have enough. I mean, it's a bit slow with pawn at a7, knight at a8, a threatening mate here. So again, it's a bit slow to go pawn at f5, allowing take c1 with a mate threat here. Oh, draw, knight at a7, knight at e6, draw. It's not really what Opper wants, but how to avoid it. Oh, rook takes. Oh. Can he get away with just pawn takes c1? I wonder. Oh, no, he can't do this. Oh, yeah, the bishop covers c7, I guess. Hang on, I'm changing my mind every move. I can't tell who's winning. Two rooks and a knight are not really the pieces that he wants or needs. Even just king b8, king a7, a8. Yeah, or this way. Yeah, so he needed a knight and maybe even another heavy. And of course it was a fake queen there on c1, even if he had a chance to take it. So very well played from Opper, and I can't exactly answer Flourish's question. I have to have a look because I'm sort of giving general impressions. I'm not following the precise moves because it's going a bit fast for me. It reminds me of a little bit of a game where Jasugi played an early rook d8, and it turned out good for black. So probably going to see an exchange on g3 to make a weakness and then pawn at f2 at some point. But yeah, how do you defend everything? So Opper's strategy in the last few games is very clear. Just go for early material and then try to run Jasugi out of pieces, but they just keep appearing back on the board for some reason. I didn't think he'd go this way. I guess he wants to gain access to e4 instead of going for knight g4, because that way you have stronger threats on g3. Ooh, I don't know whether he's going to be safe this way. Knight at f2 check, but there's a counter if he can't take the queen with check. It's all relying on the fact that every move is going to be a check. So takes, knight comes back to e4, saving a knight. Or maybe it wasn't that important. Yeah, bishop b4, very nice. There's also knight e4. Okay, another super sharp game from both players with mate threats everywhere. So Jasugi still in the lead after Opper took 3 in a row, 18 games to 14, with still 18 games to play. So we have a queen sack with possibilities to drop something on e2, but black has to drop a piece here first. I don't think Opper should have allowed this. He should have taken the bishop back first because, yeah, queen takes f7. Crazyhouse is asking, isn't this theory? I don't actually think it's theory unless the knight came to c6 in the opening, but obviously it's a very similar line to the knight on c6. So Jasugi's just going for the same sort of patterns where the queen sacks and then there's a knight g5, queen takes g4. Because once the queen reaches g4, there's no possibility of a counterattack on h3 and g2. So that means he can even just, I don't know, pick up some pieces, pick up some material, and his king's always going to be safe. Yeah, so covering h3, there's no knight at h3 check. Black actually needs 3 knights to mate on, starting with knight at f3. And then you have knight at g2, queen at g1, knight at f2, but with 2 knights it's not enough. Yeah, so queen comes back, knight at g5, knight at e6. Yeah, just too many pieces. Okay, this is one way to do it. Yeah, because the knight also covers h3 in case queen sack. Yeah, just knight takes. And then, yeah, crash through by brute force, queen at e4 to mate. Yeah, so the key in the opening there was Opper shouldn't have allowed the queen at e8, and bishop takes h7 check is almost always good for white when the 8th rank is blocked out by something on d8. Okay, he doesn't have a pawn that he would like for d2, so he's blocked with a knight. Trying to trade the bishop and grab a pawn on e5 perhaps. So, okay, so the knight here covers f5. First impression looks good for white because of the weaknesses on g6 and h7. So Jasugi's relying on some sort of a queen trade with the open f file. Still think it's getting harder to say with certainty, but is there anything wrong with king takes f2? Does he have everything covered? Maybe there's a trade in bishop f2, knight f5. Maybe that's what he's worried about. So he's going to have to block, and then... So the rook importantly covers f7, f8, so... It's not entirely sure what... Oh, with this rook gone, there's a mate threat with bishop at... or pawn at h7. So what do we have? Jasugi must counterattack. The bishop open. Queen at b4 check was available. Maybe not even good enough though. Oh, but there was... Oh, there was a rook at b3. Yeah, again, very hard to say with certainty. But now it looks like mating for black with bishop at b4. Hang on a second. Opper's got to block with the right piece. Oh, bishop at c3. It didn't matter. He had to block with the rook to cover this, but surely there was some sort of mate anyway. Rook at, bishop at, king b5. Alright. We'll look at that another time. So here Jasugi's avoiding knight f3 due to that game he lost in the opening with pawn at e4. So this move stops the queen coming to e4 with check. The queen has to come back. I wonder whether we're going to see a bishop sack before castles. No. Probably just castles now and leave the knight hanging. Bishop takes, helps to cover some key squares around the king like g2. Again, we had the possibility of a bishop sack on f2. Perhaps these squares were well enough covered. So both sides castling. It wasn't what I expected with potential sacrifices in the air a few moves ago. So probably black just wants to take twice, but then there was a strong counter with bishop at d4. He's gone for the queen. So he really wants knight at h6 with check. But yeah, it's too much to sack the queen because h6 is covered. White's still very safe. Both sides are very safe with the bishop on g7 and g5. Blocking out the h-file. Yeah, this one probably decided on time, so Jasugi's going to have to motor. But, nah, too slow. Yeah, no counter-attack here. White's always going to be safe. Black is always going to be safe. Yep. Okay, well done, Opper. He lost 3 in a row, then has started to come back. So 20-15 in favour of Jasugi. 15 games to go. Here we see a slight variation with knight takes c6. Hang on, e5, doesn't that just allow knight takes? But I guess he was going for queen d5. No, that allows bishop takes. Knight at c7. What was he aiming for after knight takes e5? Okay, castles, but lots of weaknesses around the black king to take advantage of here. Just trade a knight at g5. Bishop at b3 first, okay. Take again. Is there some way to deflect the bishop away from e7? Oh, he's just going for a repeated pin and then exchange. So that's why he's dropped the knight, but then knights are easier to pin. So still no trick with the bishop deflection. So he's just dropping pieces on to harass the queen. Looks like big advantage for Opper. Yeah, so knight takes e5, threatening knight at g6 also. Pinning along the e-file, that's why he's blocked here. Queen g4, nice move, just covering everything, attacking on f4 and threatening knight at h6 mate. Yeah, too much to cover. Now that is how you play against Jasugi's opening. That is what I would call a model game from opperwezen against e4, d5. So Oppo slight comeback 2 in a row. We have a 4-game differential. And I haven't seen this opening before with knight take 97 and knight takes c5. And as I keep saying, I'm not really focusing on the move order and the precise moves too much. In 1+0, that's a bit hard to do as a commentator even. So I'm just focusing on general impressions and ideas for both sides, and weak squares and possible tactics in the air, like the e7 square, so that's why he has to take with the queen. It does allow tricks like this though, trying to deflect the queen and just gain tempo. Queen has to move right out of the way. Maybe pawn to f6, or there's bishop takes h6 possible. So defending the knight first, quite sensible. Bishop takes h6. Probably pawn at... I'd just sack there without thinking twice. But now what? He's running out of pieces. Queen d2? Yeah, but I was expecting knight blocks on f4. I think Jasugi sacked a bit much in this game. And I don't say that too often, because we all know how dangerous he is when he goes on the offensive, but using every possible resource with pawn at g7 and knight e7. But I think black is still safe. Oh no, rook at h8. Ooh, he's going to pick up this one. But still no direct mate threat, so it takes time with rook back to h8. Pawn at h2, pawn at g3, or even pawn to f3. Oh no, that was pin. There we go. There's my first illegal move. Pawn to f3 was check. So, yeah, but I think there were many possibilities there for mating patterns with black. Pawn f, probably bishop c8. I go bishop c8 here just to clear the d file, and then knight c6. Yeah, I like bishop back to c8. It's a funky move. Bishop e6 and then bishop c8. Queen takes and then sack the... Oh no, don't sack the bishop, because there was that pattern again with bishop at b3 that we saw in the previous game. Queen d2. Right, so queen at b2 can be answered by bishop at a3. Check. So just coming back, take knight takes is the idea. There was also queen takes e4 with check. So yeah, just abandoning the bishop. Going for a counter with... Well, the knight takes d4 could possibly be answered by queen takes d4 and then knight at e6, check. Probably bishop at h3. I think there's too many weaknesses to sack the queen in this sort of position. Yeah, black doesn't really want trades. He wants to put the bishops on before he trades too many pieces. These pawns are going to be so dangerous when they come forwards, like pawn f6. It's just too hard to cover moves like pawn f6. Bishop at e7, I guess. But even then, it's just too strong an attack. Yeah, pawn at g7 is a safe way to play. Rook at g3. With the time advantage, there's no way black is ever checkmating. Yeah, and of course white doesn't need to be precise in this sort of position. There's no possible way in. Look at this fortress. Yeah, even just queen to e7 and check, 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 check. No way Oppo is going to lose this one. Alright, thanks for the follow, chess teacher Tom. What do we have here? So Oppo 4 in a row. See, I knew it was going to happen. You just have to have patience. Oppo's pulled it back to only a 2-game deficit with 12 games remaining today. And of course this is only part 1 of the 2-part series. 50 games to go on Sunday the 1st at 6 PM UTC. So here we see a rare opportunity to castle queenside. So of course, Yeah, whenever you're presented with that opportunity, you always have to do it. Castle queenside. You can see black doesn't have many pieces pointing in this direction towards this quadrant of the board. Bishop takes helps keep the white king very safe, so I think white definitely has the advantage. Yeah, even after the queen sack, I still say white has the advantage. H takes, and there's some big potential attacking opportunities. Knight at d5 gains time hitting the queen. Maybe even knight at e7 check, or rook at g1 first, just to cover the back rank a little more in case of queen at g1. He's allowing queen at g1 because probably just rook at c1 or rook at e1. Bishop at e1 perhaps, or bishop at b4, bishop at a5 even. No, he's saying, okay, I'm safe, that knight's not going to harm me too much. Just going all out for the attack. You got to watch out for knight takes d2 check, so oh, I didn't see the time. Yeah, I really felt white had the position, the advantage on the board for most of that game. Oppa did very well to defend with the pawn at g2 and the queen on the back row, and some threats to keep Jasugi guessing. But I still felt like white had the edge most of the game, just a little bit too slow. Okay, so what do we have here? Queen sack on c6, but he doesn't want it because of the possible danger here, and even after knight takes c6, the bishop had e7 covered, so maybe he could respond with bishop takes e2. Okay, black king looking very safe, which is, I think, bishop back to d6. Part of the reason Jasugi plays these openings with black, these gambits, is because he can focus more on counterattack and doesn't have to worry so much about keeping his king safe. It just comes naturally with the bishops like this. So, very hard to break through on these light squares. I wonder if Oppa can do anything. It takes a few moves with pawn at e5 and maybe rook at e7 check, pawn takes d6 check, that sort of thing. Thanks for the follow, Royal Maniacs. But there's a very strong counterattack here with knight at h3. But even king h1, oh no, there's a threat of queen at g1, knight takes, bishop takes g2. That was very sneaky to watch out for. That's why, yeah, white just ran out of pieces. Very sneaky mate with this diagonal open with queen, knight at h3, king h1, queen at g1, knight takes, and then bishop takes g2 mate with the knight guarding on f4. So that's how to make use of the pieces that he had on the board. And yeah, as I said, just Oppa ran out of pieces in the counterattack. Well, I'm not really sure who was trying to attack in that game. I guess both players. So very nice play with the bishop skipping the king safe on d7. And the only way through on the dark squares, but just too slow. Okay, queen sack, rook back at g1, I'm guessing. Bishop at f1, pawn at g2. And so the bishop sack doesn't quite work immediately because the knight covers e6. So white is going to have to hold this position and defend. So one idea is take here and bishop back at f3, just to try and keep the queen trapped on d1. Yeah, but as I said before, it's a bit hard to attack with the knight covering on e6. Probably bishop at keeps the king safe. Yeah, looks like after knight takes, black should be winning. And knight at g2. Yeah, there's a knight f4 coming, and then or bishop takes, queen check. Okay, very, very nice play from Jasugi. From Oppa with the black pieces there. So there was a 5-game streak for Oppa. We now have only a 1-game difference, 21-20 in favor of Jasugi. C takes again. We have this 4-pawn wall. Hello, blitzing bullet. There was some message about a highlight. Oh, that's just because my name. He mentioned my name. Ah, hello, Blessing Bullet. What do we have here? Yeah, I kind of like black in these sorts of openings because of the pawn wall. I mean, you could argue that he has some weaknesses, but I actually think all these pawns keep the center closed, and it's a bit harder for white to find precise avenues to attack. So the only way in e6 f7, or by pushing the h pawn all the way to h6, because even if he gets in pawn or bishop at h7, king h8, he still needs a knight for f7, and then it's not that obvious how he gets a knight at the moment. A rook also obviously on h7, but could watch out for moves like knight at c2 check. Maybe just knight comes back. Knight a2. Ooh. Black really needs a bishop for e2. I was thinking maybe he has time for knight a3, knight c3. Oh, Opper's missed this one. There was king c1, knight at d3 as well. Yeah, so black had very strong counter-attacking chances there because white just couldn't pick up the pieces that he needed to mate, which were a knight or a rook. So very good play again from black. 2 games in a row. Or is it? No, hang on, it's 4 games in a row. Black has won 4 in a row. Okay, so let's see Jasugi try to pick up the pieces with white here. White has not gone very well so far today. And I'm not sure, maybe someone would like to do a statistical count on how many games white and black have won. I think it'd be close to 50-50. So Opper must have missed something there because it didn't look immediately fatal. Somehow he lost the queen, and then there was a queen at f7 checkmate. So again we have this early queen d5, and there's queen e4 potential. Maybe the bishop can somehow be vulnerable, but he's always going to trade on f6. So we had this position a couple of times, and I think Opper did well when the knight was just sitting there, because e5, I thought in the previous position it was a bit slow because we already had the bishop on f6 cracking open a hole on g7, but it's not exactly the same. So Jasugi's aiming for something like knight takes h4, but then the rook can move without allowing pawn at g2, so he needs a pawn and then knight e3 and pawn at g2. So that's exactly what he's going for. King g1 I thought would be the response, but then there's knight h3, but then king h2. Very hard to calculate, but he's kind of dicing with death. King f2 is open up an avenue this way, but then rook takes is not possible due to queen at g2, queen takes e2. I think Jasugi's got this one. Yeah, rook takes queen at g1 and queen g2 to finish. Whew. So very well played again with black. That is... Oh no, so Jasugi won one with white, so it stops the black streak. But Jasugi has won 3 in a row, so it's a very important last 6 games because Opper is going to need to pick up his level just a touch in order to try to equalize the match after part 1. We have only 6 games to go, and I didn't catch the opening, but I don't often see the queen on g6, so it looks like one of these funny Scandinavians. But yeah, let me just see if I can catch the opening. Oh no, there's an early queen g5. Okay, I don't know what to call this. Early queen g5. Right, an unknown opening. The unnamed. Maybe someone in the chat would like to give it a name. The early queen g5. So obviously going for the queen trade and queen at e8. Or was there some sort of a counter attack with queen at and pawn at e2? So that's the danger on knight takes queen. Queen at d1, pawn at e2. And then if he blocks with the rook, he can take and rook at f1. But he can block with the bishop on e1, I think. Or was it just pawn at e2 the main danger there, not queen at d1? Possibly just pawn at e2 if knight takes queen. Okay, so this time he's allowed it, king e1. Notice here that the rook, that was the idea of bishop a3, so to clear the rook to cover d1. And now rook may not be enough pieces. No, bishop knight rook is not enough. Jasugi's got this one. Just rook takes, queen at e7. Yeah, just keep dropping pieces till you have mate. Should be easy enough. Jasugi, he's pulled away at the finish. And again, I have to say, this is a very important finish for Opper not to lose touch on the scoreline with Jasugi, because it's going to make part 2 so much harder if he loses 3 or 4 or 5 out of the next 5. Okay, a4 without rook a3. We don't see this very often. What's the idea? To stop b5? I don't know what to call this, but oof, I thought he's going to run out this way to f1 and e2 with the king. No, he has to block this diagonal now. e5, bishop takes, knight takes queen. Oh no, he's allowed to mate in 3. Queen h1, knight h2. No, Opper's really dropped the ball in the last few games. So yeah, I'm lost for words. We don't see this too often. We saw it a little bit in part 2 against Jan at the beginning. He was down something like 10 games, but then he managed to pull himself together and come back into the match. And even that part of the series wasn't so bad in the end. But here we see a 6-game differential, 26 games to 20 in favor of Jasugi. Probably just bishop at e3, but there's pawn at g4, I was going to say. No, very hard to tell who's winning this sort of position, because if Jasugi allows moves like pawn at f3 with tempo and lots of trajan, bishop at e4 must be good for black. So Opper should probably just abandon the rook and go for the attack. But no, he's gone for defense instead. Okay. I thought he would have just thrown everything into the attack. Maybe knight takes d6 was a worry. I don't know. I would have just probably forgot about the rook and gone for the attack. Let's see. He's allowed the white king to reach some relative safety. So white's defending with the rook e2. I wonder if black has anything. So this is the way in. Pawn at e2 perhaps? No. Gonna watch out for a counter-attack with knight at c7, but then maybe the king is safe here, and then... Okay, so now's the time. Now's the moment. He's got to pull the trigger and go for it. Rook at g2. Yeah, that's it. King takes force. Pawn at f3. He's got queen at e4. Oh, pawn at g4. h5 to follow. What? Oh, queen at... Oh no, Opper. Oh, what excitement. What drama. Was there a mate? Queen at h6, king takes. Queen takes f4. Oh, I can't tell. What an amazing finish. That's incredible stuff. I couldn't even tell whether there was a mate in the end. Bishop at h5 covers f7. Queen at b5. We don't see this kind of fork very often. Queen at e4 check. Bishop takes. Queen takes check. This must be good for white, you would think. But with Jasugi the way he's playing, I'm too scared to call anything. G6 was mate probably, says Ariuse. Yeah, I'm just so amazed at the moment by Jasugi's resourcefulness. I don't even want to say anything definitively. But my impression is that Opper should just be totally winning this position. Knight at f7. There we go. We see a mate in 1. Knight at f5. Knight at g4. Okay, how many games to go? 2 games to go. We still see a 6-game differential. So Opper really needs these 2 games to make his task in part 2 of this series just a touch easier. So Jasugi is taking advantage of the g7 weakness, but Opper's strategy is very obvious here. Just don't lose a heavy for the rest of the game. But there's always the question, if you don't lose a heavy, just what do you do? Because you you can't afford to open up the center. So his play is to get rid of these bishops as fast as possible. We had a similar game with Jan and Opper last week, where Opper had this control over h3, g2, and it was really hard for Jan Lee to get rid of those bishops. And I think Legion Destroyer was in the chat pointing out my illegal moves that there was some pawn at g2 that I was calling for when Opper already dropped all his pawns, when I thought maybe he could have dropped a knight instead. Obviously must be good for white because of the d-file open and just these permanent weaknesses on f6, g7. Even if there's no immediate force mate, yeah, just pawn at g7, it's going to be too strong. So, it looks like this is just about it, with one game to go. Knight at g5 attacking here, picking up the pawn, putting it back on g7. And just take it, put it back, put the bishop back on f6, and that's it. Too much material. Yep, there we go. Okay, one more game. We have 49 players in the chat watching these two incredible Crazyhouse players. I haven't kept track of the ratings to see if they're still number 1 and 2, but they certainly were at the beginning. We see an early knight sack on f7 from Opper. Knight at e5 doesn't seem to lead to anything immediately. It might mean that he's only blocking out his own bishop here. A very creative play blocking out on c3 from Jasugi. So again, we had a similar opening before where I said that once black gets in these central pushes, I think it must be good for black, because white is the one that has sacked and he doesn't seem to have anything to justify black king. So look at these pieces here defending the black king. There's no avenues of attack on h6 or g6. f-file will be very useful to attack on f2. So just keep trading here. You can eventually sack. Watch out for the queen. That's a good move in defense. So probably just pawn at f2, sack the rook now, knight at e4. And you can always trade here or take on g4 with check. Pawn at f2, knight at g3, and knight takes g3. That's it. So that is officially the end of part 1 of the match. Jasugi has taken it 29 games to 21. And just some absolutely edge of the seat, enthralling play, attacking play from Jasugi. Some incredible double-edged games where it was just so hard to say who's attacking and who's defending. And it was swings from both players. Opper won 5 in a row at one point. Jasugi won 6, as you can see. So that was really the key, that the last 10 games, Jasugi took, 8 out of the last 10. And that is really the main difference. Before that, it was just neck and neck all the way. And it was really hard to say who was going to pull away at the end. I was predicting 25 games all, or 24-26, but we saw Jasugi pull away at the end. So if you're still here, just 2 things. I will post this to YouTube in case you missed the first 10 or 20 or 30 games. And also the second part of the series, it's up on the right hand side of the screen. So Sunday the 1st of December at 1800 UTC, which is, I believe, 1900 Central European time, and 10 AM Jasugi time, which I guess is the West Coast, Canada / USA. And in Sydney, it is a staggeringly early 5 AM. So I did start the stream at 5 AM this morning, Sydney time. We're still going at 6:30. And actually, the funny thing is, even though it's early, if it was any later starting, I would have had to run off to work, which I do have to do in about 10 or 20 minutes. So I will end the stream very soon. But thank you so much for watching and for joining in the chat. To get to 123 saying, hey, are you mugwort from ICC 20 years ago? I was mugwort on chess.com and Fix. I was Creeping Death. May have been mugwort on an unrated account on Fix, but possibly on ICC. Maybe it's just as an unrated or temporary account, but I never had a paid account on ICC, so I'm not quite sure who you're thinking of. But if that mugwort you're thinking of played Bughouse and Crazyhouse, then maybe it was me, but can't say for sure. So again, thanks everyone for watching. Hope to see you for part 2 of the series. I know OK said he was gonna stream, but if I am up on a Monday morning on the 2nd of December, and again I have to repeat, it is Sunday the 1st for most people, 1800 UTC. I had so much fun today. If I'm awake, I may stream again, but we'll see. So thanks everyone again. Have a good Thursday or Friday wherever you are in the world, and I hope to see you next time.